The son of a single mother from North St. Louis who had to start working when I was 12 to help support his family, that kid grew up to become a businessman, a state senator, a lieutenant governor, and now the winner of the Republican nomination for governor of the great state of Missouri.
After well over a year, we now know that Mike Kehoe is overwhelmingly likely, almost a guarantee, to be your next governor of Missouri. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. It is great to be here on KCMO 95.7 FM. We are streaming on a post-election Wednesday morning on the KCMO Talk Radio app. And the race more or less played out the way I thought it would.
Talk about a bombshell.
I know. It's a surprise once in a while. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. But I thought that Kehoe was starting to pull away in the last couple of weeks, and this thing was going to bend in his favor by 5 to 7 points, and he ends up getting 39% of your vote yesterday over Bill Eigel's 32%, and Jay Ashcroft fading very quickly over the last few months, coming in at 23%. So Mike Kehoe is the kind of guy that of the three, and if you had met the three of them before, he's the guy that you would say, I could see him as governor. Take the policy out of it. I'm not saying, who's conservative on this, who's more centrist on that, who's a rhino, who's this, I don't care about any of that. I mean, I do, but I'm just saying, like, this conversation right now, he's the guy of the three that you would meet without knowing anything about their policies. And you would say, he's the one who I could most likely see being the governor. Meeting them, stripping their names out of it, stripping their histories out of it. He just carried himself in that manner. And clearly that's something that resonated with Missourians. And by the way, here in Kansas City, you helped deliver this victory for Mike Kehoe. Mike Kehoe ran up the numbers big time in mid-Missouri. That's his home base. He got anywhere from 45 to 60% of the vote in places like Boone County, Columbia, Cole County, Howard County. All those counties he did very well in. He exceeded his vote total. But here in the Kansas City area, he also did very well. He won Platte County, 39-40%. He won Clay County, 38%. He won Jackson County, 36%. He won Cass County, 37%. Down to Bates, 45%. So Mike Kehoe, outside of Johnson County, Missouri, Mike Kehoe won every single county in the Kansas City region that you would consider part of our listening area. He won all of them. Now, he had the backing of the cops, including the Fraternal Order of Police, and there were many folks here in Kansas City with big platforms in the political arena who were supporting him. You had, Northland folks who were very heavily behind Mike Kehoe. You had the cops. You had a lot of people who were very much in his camp here in Kansas City, and you saw that pay off last night in the elections. So that's where it's one of those things that you look at and you say to yourself, okay, this made sense. Now, Bill Eigel did well in his home county of St. Charles on the St. Louis side of the state, and some of the others in eastern Missouri, Franklin County, Jefferson County. Those were all Bill Eigel counties over there, but it was not enough to overcome Mike Kehoe everywhere else in the state. And the only county that Jay Ashcroft won was his home county of Greene County down in Springfield. He got 37% of the vote down there, but obviously it was not even close to being enough to make up the margins where he was mostly third place around the entire state, which for a guy who 1 year ago found himself in the driver's seat and had the last name Ashcroft and was already a statewide elected official, that's a total bummer for Jay Ashcroft and his campaign. And as I watched him last night, and I got here 7 years ago now, Jay Ashcroft was the guy who was at every small event he could come to. I mean, it was amazing. I thought there were like 3 clones of Jay Ashcroft. I'm like, how's this guy doing everything? He was everywhere he could possibly be. He's been working towards this moment, really, I would say, for 7 or 8 years. And it all came crashing down last night with a very disappointing third-place finish. So Mike Kehoe will win in November. It's just a matter of by how much. I mean, that's the thing about Missouri. Last night was more interesting for all the statewide races in Missouri because there are no statewide elected Democrats in Missouri right now, which means unless you get a Todd Aiken moment or something crazy like that, all of the Republicans who won last night statewide are going to be in office come January. Now, elsewhere, you had the Attorney General's race. That went to Andrew Bailey, the incumbent, over Will Scharf, who is one of Donald Trump's personal lawyers. And that one came in by a bit of a wider margin than I would have expected. It was one of the first ones that was called last night. Andrew Bailey, as the incumbent, winning 63-37 over Will Scharf. You had the Jackson County prosecutor's race, which on the Democratic side ended up going to Melissa Johnson. That's Quentin Lucas's director of public safety. And that one was a surprise. John Gromowski had all the big money. He's a guy who worked in Gene Peters Baker's office. The cops were behind this guy, John Gromowski. And Melissa Johnson pulled it off by 20 to 30 points. It wasn't even close. So she now will go up against Republican Tracy Chappell to be the next Jackson County prosecutor. And we'll see. I mean, I don't think KCPD is going to back Quentin Lucas's hand-picked prosecutor. I don't see that being likely. But I know the cops are hesitant to back a Republican because they don't think a Republican can win countywide in Jackson. So I don't know where their heads are at, but that now becomes an interesting race in the general election. And then Amendment 4 passing as well in the state of Missouri, which means that the police here in Kansas City will get a guaranteed 25% of the general fund revenue. That's where they're at right now, but this guarantees them that 25% every single year, no matter what dope or dopes, I should say, are running city council. It does not matter because now law will require them to be funded to the tune of 25%. But it was close, 51.2% to 48.8%. It went on a statewide ballot like it did 2 years ago. But due to legal technicalities, without getting in the weeds, it was back on the ballot this year. And after it won by double digits 2 years ago, it just barely eked out a victory, 51.2 to 48.8%. So that thing was razor thin. And then last but not least, on the Missouri side, you had Josh Hawley, obviously, now going up against Lucas Kuntz. Lucas Kuntz. This guy, Lucas Kuntz, wanted to be the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate a couple of years ago when he ran against Eric Schmidt, but Trudy Bush Valentine ended up getting the nod on the Democratic side of the aisle. So Lucas Kuntz then decided he was going to run again. He ran for the Democratic nomination to go up against Josh Hawley. He won that last night with 68% of the vote. Josh Hawley has challenged him to a debate next week, Lincoln Douglas style, on the Missouri State Fairgrounds is where he wants to do it after the governor's ham breakfast. Little ham, a little debate afterwards. But Lucas Kuntz is saying he wants to debate on Fox News. I hate to break it to you, Lucas. Fox News ain't carrying a Missouri U.S. Senate debate. Sorry there, big fella. So we'll see if these guys actually ever do debate. But once again, Josh Hawley is going to steamroll to victory in November, probably by 10 to 12 points if I were to guess right now. Coming up, what happened on the Kansas side? Some surprises there on the Kansas side we'll talk about. We'll also get your reaction all morning and hear from the candidates throughout the morning. 913-408-7957. Pete Mundo on a post-election Wednesday on KCMO. Now, on the Kansas side last night, not as much juice as the Missouri side. There was nothing statewide of note. But on the Kansas side, we did have election results last night, and you had Prasanth Reddy winning the 3rd Congressional District primary over Karen Sirkovich. And that means Reddy is the guy who is going to go up against Sharice Davids coming up this fall. Reddy won Johnson County 54 to 46. He won the sliver of Wyandotte County 55 to 45. But it was Cernovich, who won Anderson County, Franklin County, and Miami County. Just not by nearly a big enough margin. She barely won them. She won Anderson 61-39, Franklin 51-49, and Miami 51-49. So basically 50-50 in Miami, 50.2 to 49.8. So dead even there. But Reddy wins at 53-47. I will say this, if you're Karen Cernovich, you've got to look at this result, and I mean, you never feel good about losing because it doesn't mean anything for you necessarily going forward unless you run again. But Prasanth Reddy had far more money. He had much more ad spend. He had the backing of the NRCC. So he had all of those things going for him. That's the National Republican Congressional Committee. And, he should be happy he won. And now he gets to go up against Sharice Davids. But I frankly thought the win might be a little more dominant than it ended up being, which is a testament to Karen and a pretty good, apparently, grassroots campaign that she was running around the 3rd District. But now it's about Reddy and whether or not the veteran doctor can beat Sharice Davids. Now, on paper, everything would suggest that he should. I mean, just on paper, it's not even close when you talk about who has had more success away from politics. And I say that with all due respect to Sharice Davids. But you got a guy who enlisted in the military, who enlisted, on behalf of his country following September 11th. He's an immigrant. He's a doctor. I mean, he's got all these things that we used to look for before we started caring about skin color, sexual orientation, race, things that just made you solid all-American. Somebody who would just care about the future of the country rather than, all the nonsense that we seem to now care about in this country when it comes to who we elect to office. But he's got all those things going for him. But I'm telling you, he's still a massive, massive underdog in this race. Until proven otherwise, I've got to see it to believe it, that a Republican is going to be very competitive after Sharice Davids continues to rack up double-digit wins in this 3rd District. But it is a presidential year. That will bring out more Republicans on behalf of Donald Trump that may not otherwise vote, and that could be a very good thing for Prasanth Reddy come November 5. So we'll watch that closely as well. Derek Schmidt ends up winning the 2nd Congressional District primary. So that's one that was handed off by Jake LaTurner, who ended up retiring, surprisingly, in just a few months ago. He ended up retiring. So now you've got Derek Schmidt, who won with 53% of the vote in that primary. Of course, Derek Schmidt, the former attorney general, who then lost his governor's race bid to Laura Kelly a couple of years ago. He is now most likely the guy who is going to be heading to Congress on behalf of that 2nd Congressional District, which is, all the way from northeast Kansas, top of the state line, Brown County, all the way down to Cherokee County, Montgomery County. So it's kind of that second eastern quadrant, I guess you would say, of the state of Kansas, all the way through, of course, Shawnee County, Topeka, Douglas County. It includes of Lawrence as well. So Derek Schmidt ends up winning there. And then here in Johnson County, Calvin Hayden is out. Doug Bedford, his former undersheriff, beats him in a primary for Johnson County Sheriff. So Doug Bedford wins with 56% of the vote to Calvin Hayden's 44%. And I thought it might be a little closer than that. But Calvin Hayden has made a lot of headlines, obviously, over the last couple of years for doing things like investigating voter fraud in Johnson County. We had both guys on the show to talk about that and more. And it is Doug Bedford who ends up coming out on top. So now Doug Bedford will go to a general election that I think is going to be very, very close. He's going to go up against the guy who is right now the police chief in Prairie Village, Byron Roberson, who we met during our Back the Blue tour earlier this year. And that's going to be a very compelling race here in Johnson County. So all these things going to be watched going forward here on KCMO Talk Radio. 913-408-7957. Shonda's in Olathe. Good morning, Shonda. You're on KCMO.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. Love the show. I always try to listen every chance I get. Hey, Karen worked extremely hard, and you're exactly right. She did, it was a grassroots movement. She fought and fought, and I spoke with her last night, and, I told her, I said, we still need you. So this fight is not over, and tried to encourage her in that. And then it just, I'm glad for Derek Schmidt and was really surprised. You said it, surprised that Jake LaTurner did not run again. And so anyways, but thanks for keeping us up to date on all the election information, and appreciate you all.
You bet. Thanks so much, Shonda. Thank you very, very much for that. Yeah, listen, she did not have a lot of money, and she came within, 6 points against a guy who had a lot more dough and a lot more major backing in Prashanth Reddy. So that's impressive. And listen, there's a lot of ways that she can stay involved and stay active and stay productive. I mean, she doesn't have any political background, and she came within a couple of percentage points of being the Republican nominee in the 3rd District. So, that's certainly a testament to the race that she ran here over the last few months. And there's something to be said for that. So no doubt about it. And yeah, I mean, that's what this is all about now, going ahead to November and seeing what comes out of the November elections. And there's going to be some interesting races here in the Kansas City area. I think the Jackson County prosecutor's race is the most compelling race to watch on the Missouri side locally. The statewide are all going to be Republican. No real juice there. And then on the Kansas side, I would say this sheriff's race probably has the most juice to it. Sharice Davids will be a favorite. Derek Schmidt will be a favorite. There's nothing really statewide at all. That's going to come in a couple of years in Kansas. So that's where things are at right now. Now, on the national level, we've got, of course, Kamala picking Tim Walz. Do you see the awkward phone call they had between each other? Oh, it's gold. We'll share it coming up next. The results poured in last night in Kansas and Missouri, and I'm a little sleepy as we get the morning started. Not really, but had a late night with my old sparring pal, Sly James, who we did some work with last night on KCTV5. So got back around 11, crashed till about 4, and here we are at 6:30 on a post-election Wednesday morning on KCMO 95.7 FM. As always, we are streaming on the iHeart and the TuneIn app and on the web at kcmotalkradio.com. Now, we did have Kamala Harris pick Tim Walz yesterday, the Minnesota governor, as her running mate. And you may recall a couple of weeks ago when that clip went viral on a Friday of Barack and Michelle Obama calling up Kamala in a clearly staged video and wishing her well and giving her their endorsement as she's like walking through the hallways of the Oval Office or of the West Wing. It just looked so cheesy. It was like a bad cut from Veep or something. It was that bad. Well, they decided to double down on awkward phone calls that they hope go viral. This is Kamala Harris calling Tim Walz yesterday to ask him to be her VP nominee. Here's how it sounded.
Hi, this is Tim.
It's Kamala Harris. Good morning, Governor.
Good morning, Madam Vice President.
Listen, I want you to do this with me. Let's do this together. Would you be my running mate and let's get this thing on the road?
I would be honored, Madam Vice President.
The joy that you're bringing back to the country, the enthusiasm that's out there, it'll be a privilege to take this with you across the country.
Well, let me tell you, I have just the utmost respect for you. I have really enjoyed our work together. You understand our country. You have dedicated yourself to our country in so many different and beautiful ways. And we're going to do this. We're going to win. And we're going to unify our country and remind everyone that we are fighting for the future for everyone. So let's get out there and get this done, okay?
Let's do it. Do the work in front of us. Let's win this thing.
That's right. All right, buddy. I'll see you soon. Take care. Thank you. Okay.
Oh,
bye.
So genuine, right? Just a couple of old pals yucking it up on the phone. Oh, let's win it back. Let's win one for America. Unite America. Yep, that's Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in a nutshell. All about that unification stuff, you know?
That has all the genuineness of take two of like, they did that off the cuff and then, I forgot to push record. Can we do it again? Hey, Pete Mondale, it's John Anthony.
Yeah, I know. It's Kamala Harris as opposed to Kamala who, you know?
As if the pitch and frequency in your ear didn't suggest already.
Oh, yeah, you can tell it right away. Although I genuinely think that Kamala's got note cards in front of her that are off camera that say, don't cackle, don't cackle, don't cackle, don't cackle. Whatever you do not cackle. And to her credit, as I've watched her speak more and more at some of these rallies, she's actually getting it. Like, she's actually listening. And she's not cackling her way through speeches and interactions with people. And, you know, that'll serve her well. But this guy, Tim Walz, is still a blessing to Donald Trump. This is a gift to Donald Trump. The finalists were Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, and Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. Josh Shapiro was a guy who could have delivered the state of Pennsylvania and its 18 electoral votes, and those votes that Kamala Harris needs to get herself into the White House. Josh Shapiro was a much more moderate choice. Josh Shapiro would have been the guy that Democrats could have said, see, we don't, have an anti-Israel wing of our party. We just picked a Jewish guy as VP. See, we are moderate. People would have bought it. Instead, they picked the much more progressive governor of Minnesota in Tim Walz. That's what they did. They doubled down on liberalism. They doubled down on staunch progressivism. And now it's Donald Trump's job to use this gift to his advantage. I made the analogy yesterday when I wrote about this on Facebook and X, and I used a Chiefs analogy here to explain where we are right now with this Tim Walz selection. I wrote here that the Chiefs are Donald Trump in this scenario, and they were leading the Raiders, Biden and Harris, by 2 touchdowns at halftime. The Raiders end up pulling their quarterback, Biden, and they throw in the backup, Kamala. The Raiders then make a big comeback in the second half, which included some self-inflicted wounds from the Chiefs, a.k.a. Trump, and some help from the officials, a.k.a. the media. Amazingly, we're sitting here in a 24-24 game with under 2 minutes left. The Raiders have all the momentum. The officials are giving them the breaks. But then with the ball at midfield, the Chiefs are out of timeouts. The run game is working perfectly against an exhausted Chiefs front seven. The Raiders then, what do? Instead of sticking with the run and trying to kick the field goal, they switch to a downfield passing game. And they throw 3 straight incompletions. This Walz selection is those 3 straight incompletions. The Chiefs now get the ball back in their own territory with a chance to win the game. Will Donald Trump be Patrick Mahomes and run a perfect 2-minute drill and win the game? Or will he be Tyler Thigpen? That's the question right now. We will find out in the weeks ahead whether or not Donald Trump is going to be Patrick Mahomes in a 2-minute drill in a tie game, or he's going to be Tyler Thigpen. Who else would you want to throw in there if you were trying to pick your quarterback of choice there, Mark?
Matt Castle would be a bad one.
Matt Castle, I thought you might go there. So who's he going to be? Trump has been handed this gift. Can he take advantage? There is so much to hit Tim Walz on. He's a radical on abortion. He allows the Republican Party to bring back the riots of 2020 that Tim Walz did not do enough to prevent in Minneapolis, where parts of that city looked like a third world hellhole in the wake of some of those riots. He allows them to bring back up the defund the police issue from 2020 that Democrats have tried to completely whitewash and gaslight the American people on and hope that they forget. They have been given all of those gifts. And the question is, can and will Donald Trump take advantage of it? He can very much win this election. And this is the best thing that's happened to his campaign, frankly, since Kamala came into the equation. But, I'm not sitting here convinced he's going to be Mahomes in that 2-minute drill. I'm just not. Steven's in Kansas City. Go ahead, Steve. You're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete. I know we're all kind of celebrating about this pick, but Governor, let the black neighborhoods burn. But this is. I'm very worried that he plays the role. He's sort of like Lou Holtz, as a Democrat, the football coach. He plays the role so well. I don't know if a lot of people will kind of see him for what he is. I think J.D. Vance is in big trouble in this debate. I think he backed off the debate. They're not going to. I would kind of do the opposite. I would have him debate J.D. In the original spot right away, and then if J.D. doesn't do well, I mean, he's a young guy. He's kind of overmatched right now. I watched his rally, and it wasn't very good. I would if J.D. doesn't do well against Governor Walz, then I would definitely try and get somebody like Sarah Huckabee Sanders, because we can't. We can't be
Stop.
underestimating these
You
guys.
would pull the plug on, if you're Trump, you'd pull the plug on JD if he bombs out in the debate?
Absolutely, 100%. He's a young guy. He's
Let
got
me ask
plenty
you.
of time
Let me
left.
ask you. As a diehard Trump guy, just right now, do you think he screwed up the pick?
I think, this is my honest opinion. I'm not doing hot take or showbiz. I think I think Donald Trump listened to his sons too much. I think J.D. Vance looks great on paper. I think he looks great in theory, but they've managed to pick people that act like centrists, and we need a Tulsi Gabbard or a Sarah Huckabee Sanders. If she, she may not want to do it, but she would be perfect, I think.
Here's what I think happened. Following Trump's near assassination, the polling was so much in his favor, they thought they had this thing in the bag. He figured Biden is too stubborn to drop out. It's not going to happen. We've got all the momentum, and it's not really about winning because we're going to win. It's about making sure the MAGA mantle can be carried beyond Donald Trump. So they didn't make a political decision. They made a decision based on, ideology, and it is in part coming back to bite him. Now, I think JD can do great in a debate. I think he's gotten a lot better the last couple of weeks. He's a smart dude, went to Yale, he's getting it. I think he's much better than he was for his speech there a couple of weeks ago in Milwaukee. But, listen, being a seasoned veteran in politics like Tim Walz is worth something. Think Joe Biden and Paul Ryan back in 2012. Biden cleaned Ryan's clock. Ryan was a young guy in that spot. So all those things are going to matter.
Yeah, because I'm making my decision on the winner of the VP debate.
Well, yes,
right?
I understand.
We're all getting excited, and it's all theater.
I don't think it matters as much as maybe we're talking about right now, but I think it matters more than it ever has for two reasons. One, Trump's a one-term guy, so there's more interest in who his VP pick is. And Kamala's VP pick is interesting because no one's ever voted for Kamala Harris for president in their lives. She's never gotten to the point where anyone could vote for her. She dropped out before the Iowa caucuses 4 years ago. So no one really knows her, so her VP pick is at least more interesting from that perspective. 913-408-7957. And Sly James and I got into it yesterday on this in the green room, by the way, this Tim Walz pick. We'll tell you about that coming up on KCMO 95.7 FM, streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Last night, I was at KCTV5 from about 6:45 till 10:30. So I had a lot of time there last night. Sly James and I did some back and forth. We did it on the other channel they got there from 7 to 9, and then we did the 10 o'clock news together. I'm talking about the results last night, but then they got this really nice green room there now at KCTV5. So, we're sitting there for hours upon hours on end, just talking about different things, Kansas City, Chiefs, Royals, stadium stuff, on and on and on. And, it's funny, the Tim Walz thing comes up, and I said to Sly, this is not on the air, obviously. We were talking about local stuff on the air. But I said, dude, your girl really screwed up, Kamala. I mean, I was much more concerned about Josh Shapiro being on the ticket than Tim Walz. And he starts talking about, how the polls are not actually that close. Kamala's going to win this thing running away. So she went with the solid liberal. And he also did admit to me, though, he did admit, now he didn't say it the way I'm going to say it, but basically he did admit that there is a growing group of anti-Semitics in the Democratic Party, in the base, and they didn't want to deal with a convention in a couple of weeks where you've got the Palestinian mob hanging outside the convention protesting a Jewish VP nominee. I mean, he didn't say it quite as bluntly as I did, but he basically said, yeah, the Palestinian portion of the Democratic Party was of concern, and to create unity, they were better off going with a diehard liberal who those folks could get behind than picking the Jewish guy. So, yeah, Josh Shapiro being Jewish hurt him. I mean, I said as much yesterday, and Sly and I kind of confirmed it last night when he admitted that much. But he still thinks that Tim Walz is like this, outstanding pick. Kamala's got this thing in the bag. Trump's a thug. I'm using, his words. And it doesn't really matter because Trump's so unpopular. Kamala's going to steamroll him, and she's going to be in the White House, and she's going to have, her liberal vision for America and the Democrats' liberal vision for America with Harris and Walz. Now, then he wanted to bet me money on the race. I said, dude, I did a naked lap in the 3rd District race 2 years ago that I lost a bet on. I'm not betting politics anymore. And as much as I'm going to run and go vote for Donald Trump, I ain't betting money on Donald Trump. I'll tell you that right now. I'm just not doing it. No way, no how. I desperately want the guy to win, but I ain't betting money on him. I just, it's been for him not the best couple of weeks. Now, he can turn things around very quickly, and Tim Walz is the gift for him to turn things around. But is he going to do it? That remains to be seen. Very much hoping that he does. 913-408-7957. Paul is in Kansas City. He is on KCMO. What's up, Paul?
Hey, Pete, how you doing? Yeah, I agree with you. We got two Bolsheviks at the top of their ticket, but the one thing they need to go after, I'm retired military, active duty. Mr. Walz said that he was a National Guard soldier, sergeant major. He said that the reason I'm not sending the National Guard into Minneapolis, when are you going to get a bunch of 19-year-old cooks? That's just disparaging soldiers like that, just stuns me. They need to go after that record. He also, when they got deployment orders to Iraq in 2005, he quit. He took a knee on his unit. So I didn't say that. One of his fellow unit members said that. So let's go after his record. And J.D. Vance is, if I'm him, I'm right in his face throwing haymakers on that record. He's a socialist. They're not far left. They are communist. That's exactly, you look at his record. He's got the highest corporate tax rate. He's got the highest state budget. It's terrible up there.
Yep. That's very true. Thank you very much, Paul. Here was J.D. Vance yesterday on Tim Walz.
This is a guy who's proposed shipping more manufacturing jobs to China, who wants to make the American people more reliant on garbage energy instead of good American energy, and has proposed defunding the police just as Kamala Harris does. I think it's interesting, actually. They make an interesting tag team because, of course, Tim Walz allowed rioters to burn down Minneapolis in the summer of 2020, and then the few who got caught, Kamala Harris helped bail them out of jail. So it is more instructive for what it says about Kamala Harris, that she doesn't care about the border, she doesn't care about crime, she doesn't care about American energy, and most importantly, she doesn't care about the Americans who have been made to suffer under those policies.
That was J.D. Vance yesterday. Very well said, succinct, to the point, and he nailed it. You bring up that summer of love as much as you possibly can, and you do it in a coherent, easy-to-understand manner, which J.D. Vance just did right there. I am higher on J.D. Vance today than I was 2 weeks ago. He was never my number one choice. I still think Trump should have probably gone in a different direction, but I feel better today than I did 2 weeks ago about that pick of J.D. Vance. Now, the last point I made last night on KCTV5 about the local election results last night include the impact on the Chiefs and the Royals. What is that impact? How will last night's elections impact where those two teams are going to play going forward? I'll tell you next on KCMO. 7:05 on a post-election Wednesday morning. Last night's results, great news if you want to see the Chiefs and the Royals staying in the state of Missouri. Why is that? Because Mike Kehoe won the primary for governor last night, and he now has a 99% chance of being the next governor of Missouri. He is the only guy of the three major candidates on the Republican side who we had all interviewed and all talked to, Bill Eigel, Jay Ashcroft, and Mike Kehoe, who said he was open to using the tools in the state's toolbox to help keep the Chiefs and the Royals in the state of Missouri. We asked him about it on multiple occasions, and if you had not heard what Mike Kehoe had said about this, here is part of what he said on the show a couple of days ago.
I would tell you, and I've said this very publicly, I do not believe we should use taxpayer dollars to build stadiums, but I also think we need to look at the Chiefs and Royals as an economic tool that is a business here in the state of Missouri that has a ripple effect through their salaries and the various revenues they produce by both of those events going on. It's very important to keep a business that important here. We have tools in our toolbox. We're willing to work within the parameters of those and find out what it takes to keep the Chiefs and Royals where they belong in Missouri.
So that's the only guy who was running for governor on the Republican side who said he was open to using tools in the state's toolbox, his words, to do what it takes to keep the teams in Missouri. Had Bill Eigel or Jay Ashcroft won, they basically would have taken the approach of, well, you stay here if we make it a tax-friendly enough environment for you, and you're going to play by the same rules as a small mom-and-pop business with 3 employees, was their approach. Now, you decide which one's better, but if you are interested in keeping these two teams in Missouri, Mike Kehoe was always your best bet to try to do that from the standpoint of being willing to use some type of tools from the state to incentivize them to stay in Missouri, since now we have a full-blown border war going on with Kansas. So folks in Kansas who want to see the teams go to Kansas, they took a big blow last night with Mike Kehoe winning that primary. And it was the last point I made last night on KCTV5 on the 10 o'clock news. And Sly James, the last thing he said to me on the air was, Pete, that was a good point. And I was like, I can get used to you saying that, Sly. That sounded good coming out of you. And that coming from a guy who, remember, was very involved in that campaign for the Chiefs and the Royals. And, we had talked about it a little bit last night, and he had admitted that the way the Royals and the Chiefs handled their business leading up to that April election was not good and was not a well-run campaign. And it was being run by out-of-towners who really didn't get the landscape of what was happening here in Kansas City and Jackson County at large, and why this thing was not nearly as much of a slam dunk as the pollsters were telling the teams. The teams were convinced they had a coin flip chance of winning in April. And then they got utterly embarrassed by 20 points. So they're back to the drawing board. And we were kind of in this holding pattern, I believe, for both of these teams to basically say, okay, who's going to win this governor's primary? Because whoever wins the primary is going to be the next governor. That's going to be Mike Kehoe. And now I believe Mike Kehoe is a guy who has always been pretty involved in economic development in the state. He was instrumental in getting the World Cup to Kansas City. He knows all the players when it comes to, the sports stuff, economic development, and he's going to be the guy now who's probably going to have to lead the way on this negotiation with these two teams. We have complete and utter incompetency in Jackson County. Frank White has no interest in leading anything. I mean, Frank White, as far as I can tell, is more interested in being the Monarchs' first base coach than he is being the elected official and leader of Jackson County. And the people who are on the Jackson County legislature, I'm not going to say all of them. There's a couple of folks who have, some competency, but most of them are just complete clowns who have no business being in public office. So they're not serious. Then you get to the city level. And I believe there's no love lost and probably some mistrust between the teams and Quentin Lucas's office because of how the last few months played out. So the teams are probably keeping the local folks at an arm's length, as they should to some degree. So in comes Mike Kehoe on his horse to basically try to save the day and save these two teams in the state of Missouri. What can he do? I don't know. But I heard this about a week ago, and I'll float it out to you here first on KCMO. There may be a chance that some type of special session is called in the next couple of months to talk about funding mechanisms for not just the Chiefs and the Royals, but, sports teams at large. Blues, Cardinals, they want some upgrades. There could be some type of special session called involving funding for projects like the Chiefs and the Royals. That is something to watch. Now that the primary is over, now that everything is done, there may very well be some movement on this front. And we know the Chiefs, they want answers by the end of the year. I don't know if they can get the answers they want by the end of the year, but they can at least get some public direction from the legislature that here's what we want to do, here's where things are going. Not that they could get something done during a special session, but at least it gets the ball rolling. So it would not surprise me, now that we are through the primary and now that Mike Kehoe is the candidate, if we do end up in a situation where that starts getting some more conversation going forward. 913-408-7957. On the text line, Pete, I think no personal property taxes, no state income tax, deporting illegals should come before worrying about the Chiefs and the Royals. I didn't say it shouldn't. I never said the Chiefs and the Royals are the most important thing happening in the state. I'm just saying that since that topic is one that obviously is the topic of the year, I would say in this town, the biggest local story this year in the Kansas City region has been the drama around the sports teams and what happened back in April. It has been, part of every major conversation in this town across the board this year. But I'm not saying it's more important than taxes or, crime or anything like that. But obviously it's a huge issue that a lot of people care about beyond the inner working of politics. Like, this issue transcends the die-hard local political stories and people and things like that, because it's the Chiefs, it's the Royals, it's sports. But at no point, I don't know, John, maybe you tell me in the last 7-8 minutes, have I said it's the most important thing in the state or no?
Thanks for hating kittens. Right.
Yes.
We try to talk about one thing at a time to keep it focused. So
yes.
we can move on to a variety of topics.
Yeah,
sure.
We've
We've got several listed here.
I hope that the Missouri legislature keeps cutting taxes. Now, actually, there was a tax cut that just came in or is going to come in September. They're going to be lowering the income tax in the state of Missouri, but I'd love to see them cut more taxes. Sign me up for more tax cuts, baby.
Woo!
Okay? Absolutely. Sign me up. No doubt about it. But I'm not sitting here saying the Chiefs and the Royals are the most important issue in the state. I'm just saying to keep those teams here, I would not be surprised if that special session ends up being called now that we are through a primary.